Welcome everyone, and this is Uspe Mbele, and as the gentleman has said, I represent the Music in Bizo, but I also wear another hat. I'm a marketing and business development manager at Downtown Music Studios, right? Welcome to day 2 of Music in Africa ACCES, and I have a very distinguished panel with me, and introductions have been done, and the topic that we're going to be tackling is monetizing music in the digital era. And we're going to look at solutions, we're going to look at strategies that work for the indie artists. But before we jump into everything, I'm going to bring this question to you, Antos, right? Can we define what an indie artist is?
Is my mic on, right? I suppose that the word indie has evolved over the years, but particularly when I make reference to indie labels and artists, are those that are not signed through a major record label or a major indie. So it's when you are representing your own masters and your own compositions through a distribution deal. If that is the question you're asking me.
Okay, we're setting the stand here. Ruddy, would you like to jump in and tell us a bit about the digital environment in the continent?
So I would want to go in on the definition part.
On the definition part.
I think one of the first things that we all need to do as people around music is to actually redefine it, because the picture has changed. I mean, it's not, you can still represent and manage your masters and all your catalog and content and still have a line through a major in the distribution space, which is just 6 degrees of separation from being an independent or not. So I think maybe one of the things that we all need to sit here and debate on is what constitutes that label of an indie, because I think it's changed. Because I see some indies with major muscle, and maybe we should also bump them up into the major leagues. Because if you look at some of the output that they're putting out.
Are we talking about the continent when you say with major muscle?
Yes.
Okay.
So in my native country of Ghana, there's a player whose masters in value, and it was because he's been smart in actually managing the catalog and getting all these smart distribution deals. It's north of $4 or $5 million. Wow. And he sits in Accra quietly. Yeah. It's because of the kind of deals that he's entered into in getting his things out. So him, I look at him and I'm like, you're not a small player. Stop misrepresenting yourself, because you could have big conversations from the perspective of the continent.
Definitely. I think we're going to jump into that because we really need to look at how he made that happen. But if I come to my right, should we redefine the indie artist, the label? Gentlemen, Ruddy, let's start with you. Ruddy? Roland, let's start with you.
Okay. I definitely think that the scene is changing. And I think that's the beauty of where we are now. The old definition definitely needs some relooking, because again, it's just about what made the strength of your major publishers, etc. was they had the business sort of team behind that made those deals possible. Now, with the digital space, I think you've got that direct, the artists themselves have that direct sort of contact with the players, yeah. So definitely needs to be relooked.
Okay, so we're starting a revolution. Are we relooking at this indie label?
I would say that when we are talking about indie talents, we are pointing out at do-it-yourself artists and artists who are building their own structure to navigate these ecosystems successfully. And those are the most significant in number in Africa. So I think that they should be our target today.
And are we looking at the net value of the catalog in order to say, Ruddy alluded to $4-5 million US? Are we looking at the net value of the catalog, then we're saying we need to bump you up to a different space? Or we can just, what aspects are we looking at to say you are no longer an indie? You can jump in, Antos.
Yeah. I think moving away from just the definition of an indie, because I think as long as you own your own masters, or you at least own 50% of your own masters, you remain an independent artist. And I think that was what I was alluding to, because this industry has changed. And as we talk about the artists, we need to also talk about the actual distribution of the content. So what you were talking about in terms of one artist's value, that is fantastic. The thing is he still remains independent from what I can understand. And he's been clever. And I'm going to go back until what Ralph said is he's created a business now. He's created a business, or they have created a business for themselves that doesn't mean they have to give away their masters. And that is really what I think is the core for me in terms of Africa. And I think that anybody who knows me has been my most activist thing is like, don't give away your masters. What I want to do is just come back to just talking about, not just talking about indie artists, but talking about the distribution mechanism that is happening in Africa. And how do we as independent artist record labels ensure that we, A, don't give up our intellectual property, but B, also make sure in the distribution mechanism that we're not getting the least amount of revenue. And what I'm seeing is a very concerning move to when we talk about distribution is that we all have to go through a third or fourth party before we get to a digital distribution streaming service.
No, definitely.
And that is where I think if we come back to the subject that we're talking about today, is how do we tackle that to ensure that we're earning the maximum revenue that is due to us.
Okay. So to jump into another definition before we get into the topic, let's define the digital environment, right? When we talking digital, what are we actually talking about? Are we talking streaming? Are we talking about a package of services that includes distributing? What exactly is the digital space for this music industry?
For me, it would mean that anything that you don't have to go into a retail store and buy right now, because digital is through all of the social media, as we know, TikTok, YouTube, everything is generating money. Okay. And the actual retail store that we used to know as the physical store where we went bought CDs is now online. And then let's also just include something that people tend to forget in Africa is the amount of money that is made by artists through things like caller ringback tones, and which is about to launch is video ringback tones, because it is the one thing that I think the music industry, and thankfully for us, and thankfully for those artists, it is the one thing that kept the artists in money and being able to feed their families throughout COVID. So it's also digital.
Okay. You'd like to add to that?
I'm super glad, Antos mentioned the mobile space. Yeah. It's probably, in Africa, our biggest upside. Yeah. Okay. In my country, MTN is 120%. We have a mobile penetration of 120%, which means technically every other Ghanaian, including Antoine, has 2 phones. I don't. I'm clumsy like that. I will lose one. Yeah. But that's also an opportunity for getting throughput or getting music out. Okay. It was also, honestly, the very first channel that gave digital money to talents. Because you put your CRBT there, networks will sometimes even subscribe all of us here without even knowing. And we get docked from our airtime or talk time that we upload, and the splits come in there. I mean, one of the things is we didn't probably get in there to we didn't have an Antos at the back. In the early days, put in a structure because it got also into dangerous spaces. Like there were huge losses. Like you definitely go and come in 6 months and not find one CD there, but you know that the song was out because it was being pushed. Yeah. So those are, but mobile I think represents that lowest hanging fruit from a digital perspective. It's not even your aggregated data streams. DSPs are great, but mobile is everything, to us.
Yeah, I would like to add that, yes, aside from South Africa, CRBTs are huge in the rest of Africa, and they account a lot in terms of digital revenue. So you have to keep that in mind. It's very important. It's still very important in Africa. And to answer your question, I would also like to underscore the fact that people and these indie talents must be aware about copyright royalties, because when it comes to digital, a lot of them are just focused on distribution rights, master rights, and they forget that copyright is also generating money in the digital world. So, for instance, I've been speaking with some major players, and sometimes they think that I'm competing with TuneCore, with Believe, with the Orchard. I say, no, not at all. As SACEM, as a CMO, I'm handling copyright royalties, which are, how can I say, an additional source of income. So don't forget it. Don't leave that money on the table. And I think that a good strategy starts with a good understanding of the ecosystem you are working in. And a lot of them don't understand copyright, don't understand that it's long money, and it's a long tail revenue money, and it's so important.
No, definitely. So what we have now, we sort of understand the player, right? The indie artists. We understand the environment that we're talking about. Can we look deeply in terms of strategies and solutions now that an artist can monetize their copyright so that they're able to make money? What would be the first step when you look at this ecosystem and you're ready to jump? What should you how do you strategize? How do you plan?
You're asking me.
Start
From our
right.
side. I just want to come back to the collection of mechanicals and say that I think that a lot of the artists are completely aware of it. But even myself, who's been in the business for 37 or 38 years, find it very hard to navigate CMOs in the rest of Africa. It's why when we do deals like with Capasso, we anticipate that Capasso should be representing us, our composers across the continent. And I know it's really, really difficult. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask Roland to get that.
Okay, Roland.
So just to continue on what Antos is doing, and I think when we sort of look at, for example, collections of mechanicals, and we look at the copyright element from an African perspective, the strength is obviously in numbers, but also expertise and knowledge on how to navigate that space. From a Capasso perspective, what we've done is we've built a licensing hub, essentially representing multiple territories in Africa when we negotiate with your DSPs. So, but going back to the first point, like I think what is the first step? I think it's knowledge, right? Educate yourself as much as possible. I know a lot of people shy away from, the what appears to be the difficult side. Like, for example, with mechanical, you're looking at copyright. Copyright, you're thinking law, I'm going to have to read these long texts, but educate yourself, because there's money lying there. It's really interesting because, as a collective management organization, what we do is we go out there and say, and negotiate these deals on behalf of our members. But sometimes, once we've negotiated, once we've collected, it's still a bit difficult to go back to the right holder and say, listen, just do 1, 2, and you'll get your money. Because people still conceive this, thing to be some complex, procedure to get your monies in, but it's not. And I think so just educating yourself, finding out exactly what your right is, because almost all the countries, everywhere basically legislate on copyright. So just find out what your right is, and find out what organizations such as ours, I think SESEM also, what they do and what they're there for, in order to really capitalize on that. Yeah.
Okay, just to add on what Antos was saying earlier, right? So if we were to be in practical terms, right? Because sometimes when you look at copyright, people, they put it within the law space and they forget that the whole business of the music industry is based on copyright and intellectual property, right? In protecting your copyright when you jump into the space, or you coming to Kapaso or SASEM, right? Metadata. Can you explain to us how important is metadata when you are getting into the digital space and you setting up in protecting your copyright?
Okay, so the first thing is, just going back to copyright. I'm assuming everybody here is pretty much clued up and up to date, but the definition is in the word itself, copyright. Every time your work is being copied, right? This is the product of your genius as an artist, as a composer. Every time that's being copied and used, to make money, you have a right to claim some form of compensation, right? But the reality is that, and you can imagine, there are so many works out there. There are so many. So with mechanicals, for example, on average, right, you have one song that might have 3 composers. Some have 6. Some have 7 contributors to one song. But you have, as a contributor, you have a right to receive something from there. So essentially, the important element is the transfer of data. I can't go to a DSP and say, pay me monies that belong to my members until I have some form of, data that says this work belongs to my members. So it's vastly important for us to have that data, for us to then communicate that data to the users of the song, so them to communicate back some sort of usage reports. And it's only from there that we're able to collect and then subsequently distribute. So that is such an important factor on what we do and what our business is.
I would like to add that there are some, let's say, some simple steps that must be completed. First, you register with a collective management organization, because you cannot, on your own, license all the users that are on the market around the world. It will be burdensome, and it's not even possible. Two, collective management organization has a bargaining power that you cannot, that you don't have. And once you register, that means that this collective management organization can claim on your behalf. But in order to claim, you need to register your works, on a regular basis. So one thing is to be part of a collective management organization. Another is to register properly. If we don't register on a regular basis, the collective management organization cannot claim your works when it is dealing with the digital service providers, the likes of Spotify, Deezer, Boomplay. And if we cannot claim, we cannot collect. And that's where metadata is so important, because if the information is not accurate, we cannot collect. Why? Because you can, as you said, there are so many collaborations now in music. So each and every collective management organization is claiming on behalf of its member. You have a track with, for instance, 12. It happens more often than people think, 12 right holders. And maybe each right holder belongs to different collective management organizations. They are all claiming the same song when dealing with the digital service providers. If the claims are how can I say represent more than 100%. So, for instance, for a song, you can have Spotify can get a claim when it adds them, it's 125%. It will say, "Go, how can I say, get yourself together and come back to me." But I cannot pay. And what is key in the digital world is now, because you cannot back claims are very limited in times. Yeah. For other rights, you could go even 3 years backwards, but this is not the case in the digital world. So if you don't properly, how can I say, fix the metadata, the money is lost.
So the best way to protect your music online is making sure that it is the metadata is correct. Whoever participates is represented in the actual metadata. So let's go to the strategies, right? So you've got your backend correct. How do you take this music out and how do you monetize it and how do you make sure that you're making money, especially in the continent?
Well, I think, Ralph hit it, like squarely on the point. He was completely on point. We all know the international DSPs. We know that Apple is there. And I want to go back to the panel that was previous, and I really don't want to take up time because I really want us to share how you make money. Some of the statistics are not as transparent as they sound. Basically, in the latest IFPI report, those who read that, 90% of the music sold on digital streaming platforms are sold by 10% of the artists. Right. That means the majority of the money, wherever it's coming from, is 10% of the artists. Secondly, in terms of the penetration into Africa is very limited. I'll give you an example. I think I mentioned this outside, speaking to Alex on a panel that I was on last week. Nigeria's population, which I can't even make, can anybody know what that figure is?
200 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's only 2 million people are on YouTube. That is the subscription base on YouTube. So the entry and the growth of Africa, if we go into all those music industry reports, which are really, really important to us, is not really the truth of what is happening on our continent, folks. And I want to really be honest here, because I think that intellectually a lot of people don't want to get down and really get onto the ground. And I think that, Ralph is on the ground. We spend a lot of time traveling around. The network operator is the biggest low-hanging fruit that we have. And again, my numbers are probably a little outdated, but there are 800 million SIM cards on the continent, right?
And growing.
And 2 phones, because for a lot of people
And
have
growing.
2 phones.
And the other thing is before you hit a DSP, you're probably going through a mobile device.
Exactly. So the opportunity for Africa, by Africa, is on our continent. And we obviously need to, and I think that a lot of the network operators are now starting to realize that they too, people don't talk on their phones anymore, they WhatsApp, so they now need a new content business. And also for us to find that revenue is something that we have to do as a collective. There's no point me talking about it in South Africa and Ralph talking about it in Ghana. It's a collective opportunity because we are seeing how artists are collaborating and how African music is becoming one. It's like we had this fight the other day. Is Afrobeats Nigeria? I remember, I'm allowed to say this. I've been in the business a long time to say, I remember Ladysmith Black Mambazo, Lucky Dube, Femi Kuti, Salif Keita, Angelique Kidjo, we can go on about, they did not have streaming as a possibility. They can't just go and release something. They went onto that live circus, and we always, as record labels, had to go to conferences and sell. The principle is no different. It's a combination of all of them. And right now, because we're again seeing that live is not going to be possible, I don't believe that live streaming is going to generate revenue for our artists. Data is a
not at the
cost.
moment, yeah.
Data is a cost. And you try and get an audience. I've got a TV channel in the business. Try and get the global audience. It's really, really difficult if you don't have the money to invest. So let's look at home. Let's figure out the opportunity at home. And there, I think, is we're in our opportunity to make money. That's our
Okay.
strategy, by the way,
Looking at the continent as a whole.
a continent as a whole.
Okay, so let's look at it. Maybe ask Ruddy to come in, right?
Yes.
How do you look at the whole continent? It's divided into many countries and many territories as well in terms of Anglophone, Lusophone, and all of that. So how do you formulate a strategy that will talk to the whole continent?
I think, again, we have practical examples, and we've had them for years. I was speaking to Ninel just before we came here. There's going to be an Amapiano festival in Accra this December.
Yeah.
And it will probably not be headlined by any 15 Amapiano artists from South Africa. No, it's probably Nigerians, Ghanaians from the region.
Okay.
The one thing that has really made the continent borderless is actually our music.
Yeah.
It never needs a passport. It never needs a visa. It gets the throughput. I grew up on Angelique. I grew up on Nyanka Bell, who never came to. That's it. Nyanka Bell was on Ghana TV almost every night. Zibote is, if you talk to anybody at 40, you know Zibote.
Okay.
She never probably. I'd never heard her perform in Ghana. So the thing is, the opportunity for us to get there, it's not really a matter of borders. It's a matter of us sitting down and saying, first step, get your data right, which we've all agreed it's garbage in, garbage out. If you don't input right, you're leaving money on the table.
On the table, yeah.
That's really what it is. And the thing is if you don't input the data right, you're actually aiding the platform to cheat you. Because they have a right to say, but this is not adding up. You didn't put a dot here. So one of the key things indies need to do, spend time, as much time as you spend in building the content, making the music, paying for studios, spend time making sure everything is right before you send it out. Don't run to TuneCore to just upload it because you want it to be heard. It's the easiest part of the conversation. The hardest part is making sure that tomorrow you will make money. Then the second part is, again, opportunity exists in mobile. Across the continent, there are about, I could count on a single hand, consolidated the networks that own the 800 million customers.
Yeah.
MTN is a huge giant. Yeah, they botched music a couple of times in various levels, but we'll take that conversation differently. Antos,
I was about to go
They're
there.
back again. They're trying hard.
But the thing is this, it still is the one huge customer that you see on a daily basis. So if you're not getting CRBT, has anybody walked into the door to say, can we do a bundle? There are talents on the continent. Any Amapiano talent can walk into MTN to do an Amapiano bundle today, and it will probably be 1 million subs on that bundle alone in 30 days. This is the kind of opportunity that we leave on the table unless we start to look at the things.
Just break that down for everyone, what that actually means.
So you walk into a network, it has customers. One of the things that networks do great is have great marketing. Yeah. Every 30 days, 60 days, they have to put a campaign out. And they know, and oh, by the way, if you want the greatest source of who really consumes creative content, the mobile networks have it because they've been segmenting for years. They can tell you to the nth degree how much time you spend on it because they own that. Yeah. It's the walled garden. We are not going to get that access to that data unless obviously a capacity or a SASEM with the collective bargaining power to sit on the table to make a conversation. Because you can say my members want this thing and maybe they will make it happen. But the other side is we walk into a local network and say, I've got this song. We know it's popping. Radio is making a bomb. Streams are happening. What if we can bundle 100 megabytes of data 100 what you call it airtime minutes plus this, and I will go out and add it to my channels to actually sell. And what I want is 20% of whatever I move. The network exists to push that one out, and they do that on a daily basis. And that's, you'll be saving us marketing money, by the way, as soon as you're working with such a bundle.
Okay, so we're talking about mobile a lot,
let's,
right? And I'm seeing the strategies around mobile, right? And some of the solutions that Antos is talking about, right? Is there a way of spreading that across to the different platforms that exist?
I would like to say that yes, of course, the mobile network is key in Africa, but streaming is also progressively rising, so we shouldn't overlook streaming.
Is it progressively rising in the continent in the rest of the world?
In the continent, even in the continent.
Okay.
Progressively, still, how can I say, small, but progressively rising. And it will become as in other territories a very important source of income. True.
Okay.
And it's important to embrace as an indie artist those uses, and to also keep an eye on what is moving, because right now there's a lot of things happening. Even in Africa, TikTok is big in Africa right now, and you know how this platform is important in breaking hits. And what is great about digital is that there's no more boundaries. So you can be sleeping in your couch, making your music in your couch in Ibadan, in Nigeria, and hitting the international market. So you have to understand those platforms, how they operate, and keep on embracing those new music uses that are popping up in on a regular basis in the digital era now. So you have even live stream. Of course, the monetization is still low, but there's already monetization even in the copyright aspect. At least at SACEM, we monetize. We get copyright royalties for live stream, and of course there is still this digital divide in Africa, the data cost, the quality of internet, that are real issues that are shackles. But we know that in the years to come, things will move in the right direction. So you have to be aware of that. You have to be aware of what is going on even in the metaverse ecosystem right now, because the likes of Fortnite, of Roblox are doing stuff. And once again, the world is one when it comes to digital. So as an indie artist, you have to be pushing your works in this direction as well. It's very important. We know that as Africa, we have our difficulties, but we have to think globally, because right now, anything can happen. You've seen the CK song popping up. It's been around for 2 years, and all of a sudden, especially thanks to TikTok, it became what it became. So don't underestimate
just to jump in before I let Antos in, right? There's a point that was raised on collective bargaining, right? Why is it that we do not have research around these issues in the continent, from the continent, that speak to mobile, and we have access to this information on an annual basis, like a booklet, so that the indie artists themselves, they have a reference point in terms of how we're doing in terms of digital, and how we're doing in terms of mobile within the space, streaming, and all of that in the different parts of the continent?
So I think the first thing, just to answer your question, right, is we're here, I'm guessing there's some artists here. Their participation in events like this is one way of getting that information, right? And then I'm speaking on behalf of a CMO. We've got, as Capasso, we represent multiple members. We've got our AGM that's happening actually in the month of December. and we invite all our members to come look at our financials, look at what we're doing, look at where we're going. So on the one hand, if you've got organizations that are open and willing to let the members come in and question what's happening, it's that. And on the other hand, it's the personal participation of the artists themselves, the right holder, in getting that information and questioning and going to these AGMs and coming to these events. Because, and I think that's what's important, is we've put together all these resources. Now come and actually take part and get the information that you need. So there's two sides to it. The organizations themselves need to make the effort of making that information more available, and the other side is the rights holders need to take advantage of these opportunities that are out there to get that information in.
Yeah, because I feel like it's really important that before you strategize and plan and all of that, there needs to be proper information that you have, right?
Yeah.
So that you know that if you're building a strategy around mobile, right, you go 50% or 100% there, and you also exert a bit of, effort in trying to bring your streaming revenues and all of that on par with everything else. But without the right information that is going out to the industry, how do people plan without that? Antos, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think I just want to come back to say that I don't think that we are dismissing the rest of the digital streaming platforms. We, of course, I think every artist, but we do, and I mean, having gone to so many panels, people do focus a lot on the digital streaming platforms. So I feel like there's a lot of work being done for artists to get onto digital streaming platforms. Let me tell you what the downside is on that, and this is not about the digital streaming platforms, is that there are so many layers, because I, as an artist, have to go through an aggregator who goes through another aggregator to get the platform. So from an African perspective, I really believe, and it's our strategy, is to find a quicker way to the DSP without diluting the revenue. Because right now, it is the international companies that have aggregators and platforms, and the revenue is very diluted for artists. So I think that we know that those exist, and I really know that artists, I mean, TikTok, I know that half of my staff have been poached by TikTok to go work for them, so I think there's a huge opportunity there, and I agree. I think what we're coming back to saying is that you also can get a whole lot more money on Africa, by Africa, within the mobile network. So we were talking about money. I wasn't trying to dismiss the DSPs. We're just saying, also look this way, look into us, and look at the African
I didn't feel like you were doing so.
Okay.
I just wanted to add to the conversation.
All right,
Because I know
streaming,
I acknowledge the fact that the mobile is king, is still king in Africa.
Yeah. So there's so much more revenue that is available to the artists.
Okay, quick on, can you please break down that, you were saying that the revenue gets diluted when it comes to streaming, but how does the revenue work when it comes to mobile?
So mobile is a little quicker to market, right? First, there are a few things. First of all, you can sign up with an aggregator and go straight into a mobile network operator in multiple countries within Africa. I mean, if we want to talk about MTN, who I think is the biggest network operator across the continent, you have the ability to go straight into them. Sometimes they work through different platforms, and they do take a large portion of the revenue, but your volume is so much bigger.
Okay,
So
when you say large part, what are we looking at? A song is R1. How do we break it down?
In that instance, a network operator would take anything between 40 and 60%, depending what country you're operating in.
And then the 40 cent, where does it go to?
Then it gets to the aggregator, who takes, I'm not going to take us, but most of the aggregators I know that are working within the network environments give the large majority of the revenue to the artist.
To the artist?
Yeah,
Okay.
to the artist.
I think,
does anyone have an idea of streaming?
I think it just
the
maybe also
breakdown.
just wanted to add the fact that That's mostly on the recording side. Am I correct? Because there's also the compositions side, which is, where we collect from a mechanical perspective. But what I wanted to just maybe also put to the table and I was looking at this again through the advantage of representing multiple African territories. So in South Africa, for example, if you look at the ratio, and I'm not going to give the exact number, of how much we get from the streaming in comparison to how much we get from the mobiles, streaming is way, way, way out there. And obviously this is because of internet penetration, etc.
What do you mean when you say way out there? It's more
like I can multiply.
But coming from what international
what, from
territories?
10 to 1 or
Close to 100 in differences, because, and this is just from the mechanical perspective, right?
Okay.
So we're getting more from the digital, because in South Africa, I think consumption from these DSPs are greater than from the mobile networks. If we're looking at revenues simply from a mechanical perspective, in the rest of Africa, it's a bit more different, just because, again, of the.
okay.
Roland, sorry, I have to ask this question.
Yeah. Okay.
If you don't mind me asking this question.
Yeah.
In those numbers that you're seeing, the greater numbers, Capasa being collectively,
Yes.
what percentage of those big numbers can you break down to being local artists in the terms of the percentage? And in that particular question, breaking it down again and saying, where is it coming from? Is that coming from other countries, or is it coming from Africa or South Africa only?
Okay, so because we represent members that
International
have
record labels.
international as well as African local repertoire, I can't give you the exact breakdown, but I can tell you that this obviously encompasses, international content as well. Yeah.
So
Thank you.
But that's a different.
I agree.
Is that not a different conversation, though?
no,
No.
it's the same.
conversation.
But
The same conversation.
It's the same.
numbers
As I
are
said,
Are we trying to say that in the continent we consume a lot more content from outside the continent?
Those people that are on those streaming services are the people that are streaming international content. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah, but as I stated at the beginning, aside from South Africa, CRBTs are important. But here, we could say that streaming is already in full swing in South Africa. And we all know that Africans are more and more eager to consume their own music. Yes. So that happens also on streaming platforms. And that's only right. And I would just like to say that unlike maybe on the recording side, digital enable us in the copyright world to collect directly, because we have this multi-territory agreement with the platforms. For instance, ACCES, we have an agreement with TikTok that covers 200 territories. The same with Instagram, Facebook, covering Africa. That means that we can act as a one-stop shop on behalf of our members. We collect the money from TikTok. We pay directly the members. So there are not these middlemen or these middle actors who could be reaping a part of the benefit generated by the creators.
Okay. Who are the artists?
That's important.
Just to jump in. Who are the artists that stand out from the African continent that use these platforms to perfection?
If you take, for instance, YouTube, an artist like Diamond Platnumz is a giant on YouTube, and he has more than 1 billion views on YouTube, and he reached this milestone before Davido, for instance. So you have artists who are doing quite good, African
Diamond
artists
Platnumz, that's
from
Tanzania.
From Tanzania, for instance. And I assume, but I'm not South African, so I don't want to talk at their place, but there are some leaders in the digital world here. The guy like Black Coffee, others artists in the Amapiano genre, I think, are doing quite good in the digital world, but I'll let him
I actually just wanted to really just stress this one final point, and I think from a strategy perspective, and we were talking about these mobile networks. The difference, I think, between the DSPs and these mobile networks on the African continent, and where we can benefit the most, is if we develop strategies to negotiate with them. I see the time is running out.
No, you can
But
continue with the thought,
developing
yeah.
strategies to negotiate with them on a pan-African level. Because again, the strength that we have is collective management. We are able to go to a DSP and say, we represent this catalog. And I think that is also important, even when discussing with, we've mentioned MTN, and MTN is, I mean, you can say that it's one of the biggest, but do we as African territories, as African CMOs, go to MTN individually? South Africa goes to MTN to collect for South Africa, Nigeria goes to MTN to collect, and doesn't that break sort of our ability to then go to this giant and say, no, this isn't a pan-African,
But you see,
Okay.
this is where a small point.
Yeah.
We need to come to terms if you're in the indie space, please understand that there's a music industrial complex. It does exist.
Yeah.
Just like the military industrial complex exists.
Yeah.
DSPs, CMOs, whatnots, they do deals. But if he's telling me that the collections they make far outstrip mobile, it is true. But the percentage of that goes to international acts out of Africa, that's really a small part that we need to interrogate.
Yeah.
The topic here was, how does an African indie monetize here? And all we sought to say was, there's an opportunity already in front of you. You have a country of 30 million with 120% mobile penetration. CRBT is in your hand and it doesn't need data. But here's the other side of that 120%. Only about 25 to 30% actually have smartphones. So which means data throughput is actually very low. But what's the upside of that opportunity? It's CRBT that is sitting.
Mobile.
So if my CMO is going to have that conversation with them about integration and collection, 100%, we'll throw ourselves behind it. I don't think we need to make it a mobile and a DSP versus conversation, because I think the DSP's throughput is just honestly making money for the other side. We need to ask ourselves, so I was on a different panel, and somebody says African artists are not plugged into the world, and was talking from a Ghanaian perspective. I said, no, you're wrong. We already indexed. The matrix is here. We are in. I can Shazam a song in Tanzania and get the entire data from it, which means we already plugged in.
Yeah.
The key challenge is, how do you aid discovery and then move from discovery to consumption,
yeah.
which is when then my brothers will go and collect the cash for me. So, but there's another channel that is sitting that is already, and between the two, they can bring this giant to heel. That's all we're saying. Like, they can make a difference.
Okay. Antos, you wanted to add something before I come to you?
So I 100% agree. I know the time is up. The other thing that I just want to throw out there is that I really honestly believe that it's time for Africa to be a DSP itself, that we have a music streaming service that represents our continent, to our continent, and globally. And that we play comfortably with the Apples and the Spotifys, not competitively, comfortably. And that is part of our strategy, because also I think that the pricing models, someone alluded it to in the previous panel, is that not many people can afford an 89 Rand 99 as much as you can eat. Maybe I just want to pay 2 Rand and only listen to my content or the content from the continent. And I think there's a great opportunity lies that maybe it's with the mobile network operators, maybe we must talk about it. But that is, we spoke about making money for our artists, and I think that is also a great opportunity.
Okay, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think that what Ruddy has been saying is a very good point, because there's the elephant in the room. how do we license properly the telcos? If we are able to do that with TikTok, with Boomplay, even Boomplay, which is could be considered as an African player, we should be addressing the telco issue because there is a huge value gap lying there. And as he mentioned, we could operate as a whole because we have multi-territory deals with the DSPs. Why don't we envision this kind of deals with telcos instead of going separately? And yeah, that should be the next task, I think, because there is money there in terms of copyright, but also for the rest of the music chain value. True.
Thank you. I think we don't have any more time, but thank you very much to our panelists. We didn't even get a chance for questions. Okay.
Two.
We have 2 minutes, and can I have 3 questions so that we can we can wrap this up, one after the other, very quickly, and we can go.
Hi everyone, my name is Sabelo. I would just like to ask, you guys spoke a lot about streaming and all that, but I would just like to ask if there are any other means to make money for musicians digitally, like online, apart from just streaming, NFTs or any of the new digital technologies.
Thank you. Second question?
So just to synthesize from this discussion, it seems like the 2 main sources of revenue are streaming and then monetizing mobile telcos. But I'm sure you guys read the British IPO report that said that only 1,700 UK artists are earning a living wage, and of those, only 700 are earning above £80,000. So, and ARPUs are much higher than here in Africa. So streaming really isn't the panacea that it claims to be. If I live in a territory or a country that doesn't have the major mobile operators like MTN, Airtel, Vodacom, and where I come from, like Zimbabwe, they failed. They have tried to implement these strategies and failed dismally. What is the third option that an artist could look to? Or is there none?
Okay, a third option. Last question, right at the top. Okay, 2 minutes. So we've got a question on NFTs and new technology. Is there anything currently making money in the market that we've missed or that we should be talking about? The third question.
It's on. It's great to hear about an African DSP, and collective deals sound excellent, and also the need for a Pan-African strategy. However, my question is there sufficient artist and industry-friendly research and accessible data for us as artists and an industry to take advantage of the growth in the sector, streaming or otherwise?
Yes, research.
I'd love to take a stab at. So that's one of the things where I spoke about the music industrial complex. The thing is this: you can find indicative data that will point you to a certain direction, but there's not a synthesized central play, because if you want to aggregate, look again, mobile numbers will tell you how many customers you can get access to from a CRBT's perspective. If you look at streaming, okay, what's the internet? Internet services put out data all the time about their growth, how much reach that they are getting. It's an indicator. But I think what we all probably would need to do, and maybe something that ACCESS can help us to do as a central point, is actually put all of these data into a center point, and let's have a music conversation in and around it to find that point. But as a one source, I'm yet to find it. I'm yet to see. And
is there anything? No one source.
Yeah, clearly we lack data. This is one of the biggest issues in Africa, not only in the music industry. So we lack the elements that can help us make the right choices, the right decision. It's true, because the informal sector is so big in Africa. That's the reality. And as he said, people are also hiding their numbers. and people are bragging, yeah, I have these million of users, and at the end of the day, how can I say, the money
Okay.
is disappointing.
Doesn't show that.
NFTs, new technology. Anyone want to take that up?
I'm happy to talk about not an area of expertise, but I do agree that it's something that I think we all in the industry are interrogating, and everybody's looking at. I personally did a talk 2 years ago on cryptocurrency. The industry doesn't like me talking about it, but I do think it's the future. I think that it's, again, something that we all need to look at very closely, because it's an opportunity. Just understanding how it is going to monetize is really important, because from what I understand now, a lot of artists are not buying into cryptocurrency right now, and I'm talking about on the continent, but it's definitely a conversation. And again, I think I just want to refer to maybe to answering both the questions. Whilst in Zimbabwe there is not necessarily an infrastructure for the network operators, I can tell you one thing, a lot of Zimbabwean music that we represent is selling on the network operators, not only here, but throughout the continent. And therein lies a low-hanging fruit, because I just want to talk about low-hanging fruit. There is great opportunity on the new currencies that are coming, absolutely. If you want to earn money now, then you should be looking at not only Zimbabwe, but outside of Zimbabwe.
Okay.
There are also
thank you.
There are also platforms that allow tipping. So you put your song online, and your fans can tip you. So it's a way to monetize also. But you need to build a very loyal fan base. And regarding what you said, you are talking about the value gap. So this is a big issue in the digital world. It's true that streaming saved the music industry, but right now there are more and more indicators that seem to show that record labels are the biggest winners, and how you ensure that the artists and the authors, the composers, the creators are getting their fair share. So there's still an ongoing fight. We are doing our best as CMOs as well to ensure proper remuneration. And you have these corporations representing the artists who are also battling.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to our panelists, and thank you guys for staying with us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We appreciate you guys. A round of applause for the moment.
But streaming saved the record labels, not the music.